This episode is brought to you by Tekto Gear, TEKTOGEAR.com, a Portland, Maine-based tactical knife company. The knives are created by the CNC process to provide the best precision, functionality, and beauty. The Tekto Gear knives won't cost a half month's rent either. Today, Tekto Gear is giving 15% off the entire purchase. Go to TEKTOGEAR.com. Use the discount code STRIPES. That's STRIPES. Go to tektogear.com and use discount code STRIPES and save 15% off your entire purchase. And welcome to another Fast Take. I'm Rod Rodriguez.
And I'm Jack Murphy.
And we are discussing last week's episode, and that is an interview with the co-author of American Cipher. And this is an amazing book. I got a chance to really dive into it over these last 2 weeks. And I got to tell you, before going into this, Jack, when you talked to me about Bowe Bergdahl, American Cipher, Michael Ames, I got to tell you, I was very skeptical. I thought I knew the story of Bowe Bergdahl. I was one of those people that was
Me
like,
too.
Yeah, I was one of those people like, screw that guy. I had all these preconceived notions of who Bowe Bergdahl was, what he did, the circumstances behind his disappearance, his capture, if you will. I listened to your interview with Michael Ames and read the book, and I got to tell you, I'm not sure what to believe anymore, Jack Murphy. I'm not sure what's real, what's not. Take me into your process going into this topic with Michael.
Well, I mean, interestingly, first off, the title of the book, American Cipher, he titled it that. It's kind of a takeoff of the movie and film in Chris Kyle's memoir, American Sniper. So they titled this book about Bowe Bergdahl, American Cipher, because he is kind of a mystery. And they, try to unpack that and unravel that to the best of their ability. And I thought they did a pretty good job. And I had interviewed Michael ways back when the book first came out, and then I actually read the book and I interviewed him again. And so this was the third time I'd interviewed Michael about this topic. It's something that he remains very interested in. And, like you said, Rod, I had a lot of misconceptions about Bowe Bergdahl, about his family, about the circumstances under which he was captured. And I think American Cipher kind of explodes the real story behind it. And I think Michael would disagree with me on this point. I think that Bowe Bergdahl is still kind of a cipher. And I think that I've spoken to some of Bergdahl's former teammates who they still regard this as scandalous, and they still see it's just baffling, I think, to so many people involved. And I think the reason why is because Bergdahl is a cipher, because what he did just fundamentally does not make sense to any of us, right? And that's why you get some of these stories about, did Bergdahl defect? Was he going to the other side? Like, that would at least make sense, right? If that were true. It isn't, but it would make sense. That would be a reason why you would leave your base in the middle of the night and end up with the enemy. But instead, Bergdahl was trying to do something different, something that doesn't make sense, and using any sort of logic that you and I understand will never be able to make sense of what happened there. And, part of the reason is because Bergdahl had some undiagnosed mental health issues that he was dealing with. And so again, there are things that we're not going to understand that are always going to be something of a cipher, because in my opinion, they just fundamentally don't make sense. But nonetheless, the consequences and the history that unfolded in the aftermath of his capture is very real.
I think it's interesting that I want to go back to American Cipher, that title, because after doing the book, listening to your interview, it feels a lot like not just Bowe being an American Cipher, but I think it has something about America in general.
Yeah.
The American enigma, the American cipher here, because to your point, what he did makes no sense. And I think that's what confuses Americans the most about this situation is that we want a Marvel universe. We want black and white. We want the good guys and the bad guys. We want to believe that the guy who was kidnapped by the Taliban, spent 5 years in captivity, he's an American hero. We want that guy to be a hero. We want him to have been captured for a hell of a good reason. You know, defending his position. He was the last man standing. He led a charge. Bowe did none of those things. Bowe just had a ridiculous idea, a stupid idea. Nobody in their right mind would look at Bowe Bergdahl's plan and go, yeah, definitely do that, dude. Definitely walk off of your position into the wilderness of Afghanistan. What could go wrong? I think that's the problem that Americans have with this is he's not necessarily an American hero. He's an American who was captured by the Taliban, held in captivity, survived it. But the reason he was captured doesn't make sense. It doesn't match the hero narrative that Americans so desperately want in their.
It doesn't match the villain narrative either.
It doesn't match the villain narrative. Yeah, you're right.
To believe.
Yeah.
I think it's a. I mean, maybe I'm editorializing here, but I think it's a legitimate criticism of how journalism works and how the media works. Just one example. I was going around pitching a story that I ended up publishing with Yahoo News about a CIA covert operation. Some agency employees died. They tragically died in a hurricane in the South China Sea. And as I went around pitching this, I'd get feedback like, I don't know if there's enough narrative content in this story. And I realized that they wanted it to be like a 3-act Shakespearean play with heroes and villains and a beginning and a middle and an end. But in real life, it's like that movie, Burn After Reading. At the end of the movie, the guy's like, the guy at CIA is like, so what did we learn from all of this? Nothing, I guess. Moving on, and I mean, unfortunately, sometimes that is the story, right?
I mean, let's be real between you and I. Let's have real talk here because we've done this. We've looked. So for our listeners, when we plan out the seasons, Jack and I will sit down for about 2 hours and pitch ideas back and forth. And we have a spreadsheet full of topics and stories. But there are times that we look at this and we're like, there's not enough here to tell. There's no story necessarily. It's an event that happened, that occurred. Right. There's really no beginning, middle, and end. There's no hero. There's no protagonist, no antagonist. It's just something to that story you just mentioned. It was just bad.
It just happened.
It was a bad situation. And that's one of the cool things about the Fast Take is we get to editorialize. We get to do exactly what you're talking about.
Well, that's why people like true crime, for better or worse. And we've done true crime on military matters, and I think those episodes get quite a few views.
They get the best listens. True crime, anything to do with aliens. Although surprisingly enough, ghost stories don't do as well as aliens. So maybe that gives us some insight into the zeitgeist of America right now. But kind of going back to Bowe Bergdahl, you mentioned his mental health diagnosis. It wasn't diagnosed, but it was. That's the thing that killed me was he left the Coast Guard. Yeah. Coast Guard booted him out because of a mental health issue. They did diagnose him. They said he has this disorder. It was verified after he came back and they did another mental health evaluation, and they were like, oh yeah, this guy has a form of, I think it was schizophrenia, like a form of it.
It's like a schizoid behavioral disorder. I'm not sure the exact diagnosis off the top of my head, but yeah.
I was trying to remember that one. But the whole point of that diagnosis is that he has these delusions of grandeur. Like the world that Bowe Bergdahl sees and understands is not the same world we live in. And I think that's the really important takeaway here when we're trying to understand this American cipher. You cannot apply your logic to Bowe Bergdahl. You can't. I can no more apply my logic and my view of the world on Bowe than I can somebody who's suffering from major depressive disorder. Their view of the world is dramatically different. If you've ever talked to somebody who's in the middle of a major depressive episode, you're just like, hey, man, it's not as bad as it looks. But for them, they're like, oh, my God, this world is garbage. There is no God. There's no reason to being. I live in this like perpetual state of sadness and everything sucks. OK, Bowe lives in a different world where he views things in this weird kind of like to her point, the narrative. There's good guys and there's bad guys, and he wants to be the protagonist of his own story. So he goes off on these somewhat harebrained ideas, everything from like, I'm going to bike across America to I'm going to be a Alaskan fisherman or whatever. I'm going to join the Coast Guard. I'm going to join the Army. I'm going to be a Navy SEAL someday. Like, okay. This guy isn't living my reality. And that's to us, walking off of your position in the middle of Afghanistan is a bad freaking idea. But for Bowe, like that's an understatement. Bowe saw this as a logical step in exposing what he considered bad leadership, dangerous leadership in his unit. Like, dude, that's not how we do things in the Army. He just didn't see it that way. And in his moment, that mindset, there's an interesting part of the book where Bowe has walked off and he's now disoriented. He doesn't know where he's at. He's lost. He's got his map, but he can't orient the map to his location. The author says, and it occurred to Bowe at that moment, this might have been a bad idea. Yes, I think anybody would have agreed that just the moment you walk over that wire and you realize that you can't come back because the guards will shoot you, they'll think that you're a Taliban guy trying to infiltrate the camp. That's probably the moment it was a bad idea, not necessarily when you're already freaking lost.
You know, there's a lesson to be learned here that has not been learned in that, Bergdahl came into the Army during when they were trying to surge troops and they were issuing waivers for anything and anything. And, he had already been flagged by the Coast Guard. They said, like, this guy's got problems. And I believe they actually put in his record, like, he needs a new mental health evaluation before he comes into military service again, if he ever tries. And the Army did not do that. They were just looking for warm bodies at that time. And so the issue is that Bergdahl never should have been in Afghanistan or been in the Army to begin with. And now we're at a point historically where we are back in this place where the Army is struggling for recruits and they're lowering standards. They're trying to figure out how they can fill slots. And if you do that, if you lower the standards, if you issue a bunch of waivers for things that people couldn't have gotten previously, there's a downstream effect of that. Where are those soldiers going to be 5 years from now? What war zone are they going to be deployed to? What leadership positions are they going to be in 10 years from now? Those are things you have to think about, and we typically don't.
Ideal for fishing, especially if one needs to quickly cut a line, the Romeo folding knife comes with a light carbon fiber handle with an amazing grip and a D2 steel blade. Fair warning, the blade is extremely sharp and cuts through the toughest materials. What makes it simple is the flipper tab. The knife pops open for quick use all in one single motion. Go to tektogear.com today. Tektogear is giving 15% off the entire purchase. Use discount code STRIPES. That's STRIPES. Go to tektogear.com and use discount code stripes and save 15% off your entire purchase. I can tell you firsthand the effects of lowering the standards, the effects of the military just saying, hey, we need to fill these slots. Let's do what we got to do. As a human intelligence warrant officer, they made back in, was it like 2005 to 2007, somewhere along those lines. They made a policy that this was an Army thing where you want to be a human intelligence warrant officer? Are you an E7 that can't get promoted? Are you an E6 promotable that can't get promoted? No worries. Put your warrant officer packet in for human. We'll pick you up. We'll send you to warrant officer candidate school. Congratulations, you're a W1. Now we're going to send you to human intelligence basic course. You're going to be sitting alongside privates to your left and to your right, attending the same entry-level human course. That's my dog crying in the background. I don't know if you can hear that. That's annoying. But you're gonna be in the same human course along with privates, and then you're gonna go from there. You're gonna cross the street, and then you go to the warrant officer basic course for human, source operations course. Congratulations, you are now a W1. They send you off to Afghanistan, Iraq, wherever. You've already been a warrant now for almost a year. You got 1 year left now. You're a W2.
Man,
that's insane.
It's maybe this is like a dirty little secret. I'm airing out some dirty laundry here, but that phenomena exists in special forces as well. There are kind of, in a sense, two types of warrant officers in special forces, and some are super professional guys who like went warrant. This is what they do. This is what they're good at. For some guys, it's a way to get more team time, which is completely admirable. I respect that. But for some people, it's a way to escape negative NCOERs. They're guys who have negative non-commissioned officer evaluation reports, and going to the warrant officer course is a way to escape that and get promoted. And then, those guys end up as your warrant officer who is, super fucked up. That happens too.
Yeah, it's interesting that there's always these little side avenues you can take in your military career. But what really kind of upset me about that lowering of the standards, as far as we were concerned in the human world, was a commander is supposed to listen to his warrants. A commander is supposed to he's supposed to understand and view his warrant officer as a subject matter expert in that field. And when you've had as much time in the field as a private or a specialist, right, you are not in the same category as a subject matter expert who's been doing this for almost a decade. For example, I was 10 years into my military career before I became a warrant. And even then, at 10 years, how do you feel about your own? Dude, I am not a subject matter expert. I'm looking at those CW 3s and 4s like, show me the ways. Lowering the standard across the board costs people lives. And that is the ugly truth behind the military standard lowering process. It costs people lives. In our case, commanders are not listening. Commanders will have lost faith in some of their warrants,
right,
because they led them astray. In that respect, you've also got these murders in Iraq, where you had a couple of an infantry guy sneaking off post, murdering a whole family in Iraq and setting their bodies on fire. That's not the kind of infantryman we want. That's not the kind of person we want. You see, when you lower the standard, crimes rise, stupid stuff happens. And then you've got Bowe Bergdahl situations where it's like, we brought in a guy with a diagnosed mental health disorder and expected him to perform. I can't begin to regale you with the stories of young artillerymen that I met. Like, how did you get in the military? How are you here, dude? Like, I'm not even trying to be rude. Like you're not okay. You're definitely not. So either you met the world's best recruiter or the world's worst recruiter. I don't know which, but you're not supposed to be here. And I think that it kind of, to your point, it kind of comes back down to that with Bergdahl. He should never have been in the service. And I'm not trying to blast Bergdahl. God knows that kid has got enough people that blasted him already.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's a bad person. I'm saying he's not a well person.
And the Army should have done its job.
The Army should have done its job, kept somebody like that from being within the ranks. Bergdahl should have, instead of being captive for, years by the Taliban, he should have probably been on some medication, getting mental health therapy, and living his life as a productive American citizen, instead of being, being America's quiet pariah.
Yeah. And I mean, he paid a hell of a price for it. And ultimately, I guess the military did as well. Was he in captivity for 5 or 6 years? I mean, it's insane.
Yeah. And, the last part, and I don't want to, I know it's supposed to be a fast take, and we always go way beyond fast on our fast take. What was interesting to me was how the intelligence community got played on Bergdahl's situation. So a lot of you may dislike Bergdahl because you heard that he had betrayed our country, that he was playing soccer with the Taliban, that he was teaching them how to shoot guns and whatever. I'd never seen video of him playing soccer. I had never seen video of him shooting guns with the Taliban, because that didn't happen. The intelligence community was getting this information from the Taliban. Of course, the Taliban would paint a picture differently of their captive. They fed this information to us, and we reported it up as facts.
Well, it's a cycle too, and it's interesting how the media got played in a lot of ways and just kind of reported Taliban propaganda without any sort of skepticism. And then there are generals in the military who this plays into their own agenda, and they're like, "Well, we have media reports of such and such, so it must be true," And I mean, if anyone was doing the playing, I mean, it sounds like it was Michael Flynn and General Petraeus, General McChrystal, that Bergdahl became something useful for them, a useful tool to prosecute the war on terror in Afghanistan the way that they wanted to fight it. And I think maybe that's the big takeaway from the book.
Yeah, and that's the really the final part of this discussion is a lot of folks will point to Bergdahl's disappearance and say, because of you, I lost my leg. Because of you, this person got hurt. Because of you, this person got killed. I'm not going to necessarily disagree with that. Had Bergdahl never walked off his post, yes, none of those things would have happened. Agreed. I'm not arguing with the families or survivors of that in that respect. But I do think that there's a lot of responsibility for those deaths, for those injuries, for that trauma. There's a lot of blame to be laid, and I don't necessarily believe it all rests at Bergdahl's feet. We've covered the fact that the Army shouldn't have let him in the first place. So there is some responsibility to be held by the Army in that respect. But then after his capture, we knew, that is to say that the military, the DOD, knew that he had been transferred to Pakistan, and that leaders within the military leaders in Afghanistan continued their quote unquote searches for Bergdahl within Afghanistan. And correct me if I'm wrong, but things were executed, targets were executed, missions were conducted, knowing full well Bergdahl was not in Afghanistan, but it served the purpose of conducting that particular mission.
It was a way to get the missions approved, to get CONOP approval. And this is a bigger issue, the whole subject of falsifications of CONOPS. And for people listening, a concept of an operation is an abbreviation. It's a part of an operations order that is written for every mission. A CONOP is like just one little part of an op order, and that's usually what we went off of to get a mission approved. And this issue came to the forefront when the special forces team was ambushed in Niger, and the Pentagon accused them of falsifying the CONOP. The Pentagon was full of shit, but I kind of had to laugh a little bit at that, because it's like every CONOP is falsified. Like senior officers, like a battalion commander, a company commander, will get on the phone and coach, teach, and mentor his own subordinates on what to write on the CONOP in order to get it approved. I mean, they're all falsified, essentially. If you were to go and like murder board CONOPs that have been approved and like see what on here is factual and what is just cut and pasted from previous successful CONOPs, I mean, I don't think people want to know the answer to that question. And so coming to Afghanistan, this is what was happening with a lot of these operations, that on paper, they said that these operations were about finding and locating and ultimately rescuing Bowe Bergdahl, when in reality, they had nothing to do with that. It was just a way to make sure that the CONOP got approved.
Now, I will disagree with you. I don't think every CONOP has been falsified.
That's maybe a little bit of an exaggeration.
I know. I know what you're saying, but I just want to clarify that for the listener. When you've seen enough CONOPs be modified and influenced, and sometimes completely falsified. And it's funny because I was just talking to Jack about this before we jumped into the interview. You can become very jaded. You can start seeing it like it's all like this, especially when there's a good chunk of them that are like that. I can tell you the intel world is no different. I have been in meetings where it's like, well, how can we shift this and change this so that it means this?
And Bergdahl became like the skeleton key. Put his name on the CONOP and it gets happen. Approved. Right.
Exactly. And, the other things have been the topics. Osama bin Laden. Where's Osama bin Laden? We think he's here. Turn the key. Nuclear weapons, weapons of mass destruction. Turn the key. A dust one is a big deal. When we have somebody missing that is, duty status and whereabouts unknown, when we have a dust one, it should be a serious thing. All hands. We had a few in Iraq. Matt Maupin was a huge one when I got there. Foudy Jimenez. We had a couple of guys that did go dust one. Jessica Lynch, probably the most famous one.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the opening days of the Iraq War, Jessica Lynch was captured, and Navy SEALs went and did their thing. So it is supposed to be a big deal, and operations should revolve around the retrieval of an American taken and held as a POW, but it shouldn't be exploited. It shouldn't be exploited. So if the guy's not in Afghanistan, you shouldn't be sending people into harm's way to target or conduct operations and then labeling it as a Bowe Bergdahl mission. Because what you're going to do is you're going to lose faith and confidence of your troops. You're going to lose faith. You're going to lose some value when the next dust one situation comes up. And now people are going to ask, well, is this really about this guy? Is it really about retrieving Rod Rodriguez? Or is this about you hitting this thing or fulfilling your mission here or getting these resources? It's very concerning. That's why when I released your interview with Michael Ames, I think that it's important for folks to read this book, not just because you want to learn the truth about Bowe Bergdahl, but because this has everything to do with finding folks who have gone missing. This has everything to do with the process that we have for retrieving American troops. And and how we have and what happens when how do we label them? Just over this last 2 weeks, I was in a meeting, and I think somebody mentioned John McCain as a POW, and somebody in the room said, they made a comment about John McCain being a collaborator.
Another great comparison. There's General McInerney, retired Air Force general, went on Fox News and called him Songbird McCain or Songbird John because he was collaborating with the NVA. And they finally kicked him off Fox News for making that comment, which was not true. I mean, to this day, there are all these conspiracy theories about John McCain collaborating with the enemy. Where is the evidence? Like, it's like a boomer email chain that you get, with like stuff that's all in caps and then some's in smaller fonts and it's in different colors and stuff. And, Songbird John, but where is the evidence? And it doesn't seem to be forthcoming.
And I think that's the thing with Bergdahl, is it's so easy to focus on, well, he was an idiot. He walked off post and all these things happened because he did it. But it's much harder to look at the circumstances that even brought him to be there in the first place, or the second, third order of effect that were enacted by leaders who were exploiting his disappearance. And then how it played into the political spectrum of the time with, the presidents and Congress, the prisoner swap, who those prisoners were. There's a lot to unpack with Bergdahl. And I think that's the problem with this American Cipher, is that to solve the puzzle, you have to take your time. You have to look at the details, and you have to project a level of empathy. And some folks don't even know what that means. The difference between empathy and sympathy. You have to project some level of empathy onto the situation in order to really understand what this was all about. And even then, you're probably going to walk away from this with a level of doubt, with a level of unsureness. You're not going to be 100% sure you even understand Bergdahl after this book, after the podcasts that have been done about him in the past, after all the trials and official transcripts and people digesting this information for it to be easier for you to understand. You're still going to walk away from this not truly understanding Bowe Bergdahl, because I don't think Bowe necessarily understands Bowe Bergdahl, or the kid that Bowe Bergdahl was, all these years ago. We're asking this man now, hey, why did you do what you did? Well, why did you do anything you did when you were like 20? Even for somebody who's mentally stable or healthy at any given moment, asking what you did or your thought process around a stupid decision you made 10, 15 years ago, that's a tall order for anybody. And it's definitely skewed.
Yeah, there's not a lot of satisfying answers out there. And, I think the criticism that, what Bowe Bergdahl did was idiotic, I think that's completely fair. I think Bowe would probably agree with that in retrospect. And I can't blame his teammates for being angry with him. He broke the faith with his platoon. He abandoned them, went off of the base, and it led to horrible, catastrophic results for his platoon, at least. But like you said, it's the answers are not necessarily satisfying.
Folks, the name of the book is American Cipher, Bowe Bergdahl and the U.S. Tragedy in Afghanistan. It was written by Matt Farwell and Michael Ames. Go check out the interview last week between Michael Ames and Jack Murphy. Mike puts it into very... He explains things very well. He's the co-author of the book, we're crying out loud. But definitely go check out the book, American Cipher. It was... Here's a tip, though, folks. I would not follow this book up with or after Legacy of Ashes. I was telling Jack I made this mistake. I over my annual training 2-week, I did Legacy of Ashes. By who wrote that one? Tim Weiner, right?
Tim Weiner, yeah.
Tim Weiner. So Tim Weiner wrote a Legacy of Ashes, a history of the CIA. And then I followed that up with American Cipher. And it just leaves you. These two books together are a combination for depression. It's like washing down your Percocet with a bottle of vodka.
It's pretty damning. Yeah,
it's pretty bad. I felt absolutely terrible after these two books. I got to find something a little more cheery. So, folks, if you have any suggestions for books that I should read to cheer me up,
I just finished reading The Rise and Reign of Mammals, which is written by the paleontologist who is the advisor for the Jurassic World movies. So it's all about the evolutionary history of mammals from when we were little rodents during the dinosaur days to today. So there's something different that you can throw in the mix there.
And we're going to find out that the CIA knew about the dinosaur extinction and they didn't do anything about it. That's how it's going to end.
65 million years ago was an inside job. Bet you didn't know that.
Oh, God. All right, folks. Make sure you go check out our sponsors for the show. And also go to stripes.com, use promo code podcast and save 50% off your digital subscription. And as always, you can find us on Twitter. I'm at RodPotRod. You can find Jack at Jack Murphy RGR. Jack also runs his own podcast. Jack, where can people hear and see more of Jack Murphy?
The Team House on YouTube or wherever you guys go to find podcasts. And we interview people from the intelligence community and special operations world and a few other places.
And there you go, folks. If you just need more Jack Murphy in your life.
More cowbell.
Or more cowbell, folks. All right, that does it for me. I'm Rod Rodriguez. That's Jack Murphy, and we will see you at the next episode. This episode is brought to you by TektoGear, TekTogear.com, a Portland, Maine-based tactical knife company. The knives are created by the CNC process to provide the best precision, functionality, and beauty. The TektoGear knives won't cost you half a month's rent either. Today, TektoGear is giving 15% off the entire purchase. Go to TekTogear.com. Use discount code STRIPES. That's STRIPES. Go to TektoGear.com and use discount code STRIPES and save 15% off your entire purchase.